The German shepherd collapsed at the emergency room entrance. His front paws sprawled out on the scorching pavement, raw pads bleeding, tongue hanging limply from his cracked jaws. Each ragged breath made his filthy coat shudder, dust clinging to sweat-matted fur. But his amber eyes stayed locked on the hospital doors. Onlookers froze, phones raised to capture this surreal moment. A dog, battered and caked in mud, had followed an ambulance across blistering asphalt and through choked midday traffic. Inside, a team of doctors worked in a frenzy to save a man's life. Unaware of the story unfolding outside, a hospital security guard approached, baton out and voice tense. "Somebody call animal control," he said into his radio. The shepherd let out a warning growl, using what strength he had left to crawl forward, dragging his bleeding paws toward the glass doors. His low whimper carried one unshakable truth: someone he loved had vanished behind that door, and he wasn't. Leaving without him, the Arizona sun scorched the sidewalks of Riverdale, turning them into ribbons of heat. At 105 degrees, the only shade in Westfield Park came from a sycamore tree that barely filtered the sunlight. Beneath it, 68-year-old Frank Holloway unwrapped a sandwich, his hands calloused and sure, dividing the meal in two. On a paper plate for Duke, the shepherd beside him, who waited without a sound. "Eat up, partner," Frank muttered, his voice gravelly from age and too many Marlboros. "Gotta keep our strength up." His tattered veteran's cap sat crooked on his silver hair, uncut and wild. Deep sun lines carved across his face-etched maps of a life steeped in war and hardship. 2 years ago, Frank had a house on the east side. Then came the heart attack, the medical bills, the foreclosure. Now home was wherever he and Duke could find a safe corner. Some nights, the shelter would take them. Other nights, they camped beside the creek, where cops didn't look to. Hard Duke wasn't just some mutt. At 7 years old, the shepherd had served 3 combat tours in Afghanistan as a military K-9. A shrapnel wound had retired him, labeled unfit, and tossed into a county shelter for aggression. But it wasn't aggression, it was training. Instincts wired to survive war. Frank had seen that haunted stare before in mirrors after Vietnam. 2 broken soldiers in a broken world. Frank used the last of his pension to pull Duke off death row, just 2 days before he was scheduled to be put down. Meanwhile, across town at Riverdale Memorial, Dr. Sarah Mitchell closed a chart on a heat stroke patient. At 36, she was the youngest attending in the ER and known for her work with stroke. Victims of passion rooted in losing her father 215 years ago, this was her 3rd straight 12-hour shift. With the heat wave packing the ER with collapsed workers and elderly patients, not far from her, paramedic Dave Connor double-checked his rig's inventory. 20 years in the field had made him methodical. On his forearm, 3 scars from a childhood Rottweiler attack reminded him why dogs still made him uneasy. None of them knew that this heat would push them into something unforgettable. Frank wiped sweat from his forehead. Was already climbing past forecasts, and even with an early start, the heat felt like it was clawing through his shirt. "Water break, Duke," he said, uncapping a bottle and pouring it into a collapsible bowl. Duke drank fast, thick fur no match for the desert sun. Frank had tried trimming it with a pocket knife, but the dog would only tolerate so much. As Frank tightened the bottle cap, a strange tingling crept up his arm. He rolled his shoulder, blaming. A bad night on concrete. New aches didn't surprise him anymore. "We're eatin' like kings today," he said, showing Duke the sandwich given out by the Methodist outreach van egg salad. "Ain't roast beef, but it'll do." He gave Duke the bigger half always did. "Protein builds muscle. That's what they taught us." He smiled faintly. "Didn't tell us how bad it'd taste." Duke's tail swept the dirt, ears perked at Frank's voice. The two of them discarded. On the bench, groaned as Frank shifted his weight, and a wave of dizziness swept through him. He blinked hard. His left arm felt numb now, and the sensation was crawling into his face. He tried to call Duke, but the word came out slurred, like it didn't belong in his mouth. His vision dimmed, edges graying. Something was wrong. The sandwich slipped from his hand. A sharp electric pain stabbed through his chest and raced to his jaw. Duke's head snapped up. The change in his human was instant and wrong. Frank reached out barely his limbs, refusing to cooperate. "Help," Frank whispered, though the park was empty. His body leaned sideways as if gravity had turned cruel. He slumped, half off the bench. Duke barked, sharp and alarmed, nudging Frank's hand with his nose. When that failed, he whined, then barked again, this time louder. He pawed Frank's leg, licking at his face. Nothing. The man who saved him was slipping away. Duke's eyes darted, instincts clicking in like gears. He raced toward the park's edge, barking at cars that sped past. Most ignored him, irritated or afraid. He ran back, checked on Frank, then bolted to the road again, barking at every vehicle like a soldier calling for backup. Martha and Gerald Wilkins, both well into their 70s, were on their way to the pharmacy when they noticed the agitated shepherd. "That dog's upset," Martha said, lowering her window. "Don't, Martha," Gerald warned. "Could be rabid." But Martha had already spotted Frank. "Gerald, someone's collapsed. Call 911. Gerald fumbled for his phone while Martha approached, cautious but calm. Duke paced between her and Frank, barking then retreating, clearly trying to guide her. "Sir, can you hear me?" she called. Duke allowed her near, sensing her intent. Gerald joined them, relaying updates to the dispatcher. "He's breathing, but not responsive," he said. "My wife thinks it might be a stroke." Martha looked at Duke. "Help's coming, boy. Hang in there." 7 minutes later, the wail of sirens broke through the still heat. Dave Connor and his partner, Tony Rodriguez, jumped out with gear in hand. "Nobody said anything about a dog," Dave muttered, stopping short as Duke ran toward them, barking. "Is he with the patient?" Tony asked. "Seems like it," Martha replied. "He's been trying to get help." Dave stiffened, old fear reawakening. "Can someone hold him back?" Gerald reached for the collar, but Duke dodged, staying by Frank's side. "Might be military," Martha added, noting Duke's behavior. Tony knelt beside Frank. "Sir, can you hear me?" he said, as he took Vital's left side droop. "BP's tanking. We've got a stroke fast track." They moved with urgency. "Oxygen mask. 4. Backboard each second precious." "What about the dog?" Martha asked. "Animal control," Dave snapped. "We can't bring dogs in the ambulance." "But he's terrified," Martha argued. "Look at him." Dave's jaw tensed. "We're here for the man." As they lifted Frank, Duke barked louder, circling. "Grab the dog before he lashes out," Dave ordered. Gerald tried again, but Duke slipped his grip. "Just go," Martha said. "I'll call animal control myself." The back door shut. Duke barked wildly as they drove off. Dave climbed into the front, relieved to have the door closed between him and the shepherd. "Ready?" Tony confirmed. Stabilizing Frank, Dave hit the lights. In the mirror, he caught a glimpse of Movement Duck running after them, a streak of black and tan against the heat-shimmering road. "That dog's chasing us," he said, surprised. "Go," Tony shouted. "His vitals are crashing." Dave sped up. Still, every glance in the mirror showed the shepherdier's flat eyes, fixed, refusing to fall behind. "He's not quitting," Dave muttered. "I'm going to pull over and scare him off." "No time," Tony barked. "We've got 20 minutes, tops." Gritting his teeth, Dave pressed on, but Duke kept coming, dodging traffic, pushing through fatigue. Powered by something primal? Devotion. Dave checked the mirror again. "Still there, 3 miles in, and he's holding pace," he said, voice low. "You serious?" Tony asked, his eyes on the heart monitor. "That's one hell of a dog." Dave's knuckles tightened on the wheel. "He's going to cause a wreck." "Patient first," Tony snapped. "Focus." Dave nodded, the siren clearing a path. But at a red light, he made a call. 30 seconds, he announced. Pulling over, he stepped out. It slammed into him like a furnace. Duke trotted closer, lungs heaving, fur soaked with sweat and grit. "Get out of here," Dave shouted, clapping his hands. "Go home." Duke froze but didn't run. His gaze held something ancient and yielding. Dave stepped forward. Duke simply moved around him, eyes back on the ambulance. Dave muttered, climbing in. "We're moving." As the ambulance pulled away, Duke ran again, body screaming, will intact. 14 minutes to hospital, Dave said. Downtown blurred past deserted sidewalks, heads turning as people noticed the scene. A dog chasing an ambulance. Phones came out, video started. One woman, Melissa Carpenter, stepped out from the courthouse. She saw Duke stumble, his body failing. "Hey boy," she whispered, holding out a cupped hand of water. Duke drank fast, desperate. Then he ran again. Melissa watched him vanish and opened her app. German Shepherd, chasing ambulance, anyone know him? #Riverdale hero. Tony leaned over. The gurney, working fast to stabilize the patient. Name's Frank Holloway, he said, flipping open a worn wallet. Found a VA ID on him, Vietnam Vet 68. Dave kept his eyes on the road, swerving hard around a curve. Emergency. Contacts? He asked. Tony shook his head. None listed. No next of kin either. Dave's grip tightened on the wheel. Another vet left to rot alone. He'd seen too many just like this. His own father, a Vietnam survivor, had spent years slipping through the cracks before finally getting help. Meanwhile, 6 miles behind them, Duke's paws were shredded from the asphalt, every step streaking a line of blood. But pain didn't matter. Not now. The shepherd had been trained to push through. Frank needed him. At the 7th mile, the real challenge came. The ambulance route led across Riverside Bridge 2 lanes wide. No pedestrian walkway, just concrete. And steel, above a slow-moving brown river. Duke hesitated, eyes scanning. Then, without a sound, he lunged over the edge, plunging into the murky water. He paddled hard, current dragging at his soaked fur, until he hauled himself onto the far bank, mud-caked but undeterred. A dusty pickup slowed down beside him. The driver, a thick-armed construction worker named Mike, leaned out. "You chasing?" "That ambulance boy," he called, slapping the truck bed. Duke paused, uncertain. His training warned against strangers. But then Mike pointed toward the fading red and white lights. "Let's catch your guy." Duke made a choice. Aboard, Mike pressed the pedal down. "Got me a hitchhiker," he joked to his buddy in the passenger seat. "This dog's been tailing that ambulance for miles. Looks like he earned a break." When they caught up at a red light, Mike honked and pointed at his tailgate. Dave looked over and froze his eyes, locking on the mud-covered shepherd, staring back at him like a ghost. "You've got to be kidding me," Dave muttered. The light changed. As Mike veered off at the next turn, Duke jumped down and took off again, pounding the pavement. "Godspeed, buddy," Mike called after him, with a raised fist. The truck ride had bought him time, but the final stretch was brutal. Industrial pavement baked under the sun, and Duke's black coat soaked up the heat like a sponge. Each breath came hotter than the last. Half a mile out, Dave finally had enough. He pulled over and yanked a CO2 extinguisher from the compartment. "What are you doing?" Tony called from the back. "This dog's gonna cook himself trying to follow us," Dave snapped. "I'm ending this now." As Duke closed the gap, Dave blasted the extinguisher's sharp hiss of white vapor flooding the air. Any normal animal would have bolted. But Duke sidestepped the cloud without flinching, never taking his eyes off the ambulance. There was a message in that look, clear as daylight. "I'm not leaving him." Dave stared, frozen. Slowly, he put the extinguisher back. "Fine," he muttered. "Your funeral, dog." In the back, Frank stirred, his eyes fluttered. "Duke," he whispered, the name cutting through the haze. "Sir, you're in an ambulance," Tony said gently. "You've had a stroke. Try to stay calm." Frank's fingers curled into Tony's sleeve. "My dog." "Don't worry," Tony whispered. "He's not far." They pulled into Riverdale Memorial, just as Dr. Sarah Mitchell was waiting, her team ready the back doors. Flung open, and Tony started his rapid-fire report. Frank Holloway, 68, found down at Westfield Park, left side droop, right paralysis. BP 180/110, irregular heartbeat, in and out of consciousness. Dr. Mitchell nodded, eyes sharp, already assessing, "Let's get him to CT. We may still be inside the TPA window." As the gurney rolled through the automatic doors, no one noticed the shepherd limping into the loading bay. Duke was barely standing. Mud streaked his coat, and each step left a bloody print on the concrete. He paused, staring at the entrance. His instinct screamed to stay back, but his heart pulled him forward. Security guard Roy Wilkins stepped, up arms raised. "Whoa there, buddy. No dogs allowed." Duke tried to swerve around him, but his legs folded. He hit the pavement hard, whimpering, eyes still fixed on the doors where Frank had vanished. Roy's tough posture softened. "Damn," he muttered, crouching beside the dog. "You're a mess, aren't you?" Dave, wrapping up his checklist, caught sight of them. His chest tightened at the sight. "That's the one," he said, walking over. He followed us the whole way from Westfield. That's gotta be 15 kilometers in this heat. Roy stared down at Duke. That's not just some stray. He's trying to get to someone, Frank Dave said under his breath. He remembered those fading words. My dog. He looked back at the hospital, then down at Duke. Hang tight, old boy. With a shaky groan, Duke stood again, and somehow limping, bleeding, he crossed the threshold into the hospital lobby before collapsing once more. The tile caught his weight as his body gave out. Blood smeared behind him like a signature. The entire lobby froze. Nurses, patients, volunteers. Receptionist Brenda Collins grabbed the phone. Security to main lobby, we've got a dog situation. Roy ran in behind him, kneeling again. He followed the ambulance here, Dave told the gathering staff. 15 kilometers, no break. A young nurse, Emma, knelt beside Duke, her face focused. Severe dehydration, she murmured, and his pads are shredded. He needs a vet. I'm calling animal control, Brenda said firmly. Wait, Emma replied. He's not a stray. I think he belongs to Frank Holloway, the stroke patient. He responded to the name Duke just now, as if to prove it. Duke's ears twitched at the sound of Frank's name. See, Emma said, he knows. Just then, hospital administrator Patricia Winters swept in, all business and rules. What is going on here? Animals are absolutely forbidden, unless they're registered service dogs. Ma'am, Roy began. This dog, I don't care if he flew here on a jetpack, she snapped. He needs to be removed now, or I'm calling animal control. Emma stood her ground. With all due respect, this animal is in critical shape. He's collapsed from heat stroke, trying to follow his owner. Doesn't that mean something? Patricia's face tightened. This is a hospital, not a shelter. But Dave, surprising even himself, stepped forward. Frank has no family. This dog may be all he's got. Riverdale had a lot of veterans, and a soft spot for stories like this. Patricia glanced at her watch. 30 minutes, she relented. Then he's out. Emma jumped into action. I need water, towels, maybe some cold cuts from the cafeteria. Together, they lifted the shepherd carefully into a break room just off the lobby. Duke groaned but didn't resist. A blanket was spread out, and Emma began tending to his wounds. I'll check on Holloway, Dave offered, his voice softer than before. See if there's anything more on him, or the dog. As he walked off, Emma gently dabbed at Duke's torn paws. You really love him, don't you? She murmured. Roy leaned on the doorframe. My brother had a dog in Iraq. 15 minutes later, Lisa Thornton entered the room, a tall woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense gait. She crouched beside Duke without hesitation. So this is the stubborn hero, huh? She checked for tags. Nothing, no ID, just his name, Emma said. Frank called him Duke. Lisa repeated the name, and Duke's head lifted. Good boy. She typed quickly on her phone. Vietnam vet, right? Emma nodded. I'll check VA records, but we need time. Roy glanced at the clock. Winters gave us 30. We're down to 10. Lisa smiled. If we can prove he's trained, he can stay under hospital policy. But there's no paperwork, Emma said. There are other ways, Lisa replied. She looked at Duke. Duke, attention. The shepherd's ears perked, his posture shifting. Stay, she crossed the room. He didn't move an inch. My husband was K9, Lisa said quietly. I picked up a few things. She faced the others. We've just bought ourselves time. Time's up. Is the dog ready for transfer? Lisa stepped forward, steady. He clearly shows behavior consistent with a trained service dog, and under the ADA and your hospital's own policies, Section 12.4, service animals are allowed to remain with their handlers during treatment. Patricia folded her arms. Do you have any paperwork verifying that? Not required by law, Lisa said. Calmly, the dog's actions speak volumes. This is highly unorthodox, Patricia said sharply. Lisa's voice didn't waver. So is a German shepherd running 10 miles in searing heat just to stay beside his person. Sometimes life doesn't follow the rules. That's when we're supposed to rise to the occasion. Before Patricia could reply, Dr. Mitchell stepped into view. Her expression was grim. Frank Holloway's CT scan is in. It's a major ischemic stroke, left middle cerebral artery. He's headed for emergency surgery. Lisa turned toward Patricia. This man is fighting for his life. That dog is the only soul he has left. Are we really doing this now, kicking him out? Patricia hesitated. The cold lens of policy wavered against the raw weight of human need. After a moment, she sighed. Fine, the dog stays. I'll organize volunteers, Lisa promised, already pulling out her phone, and I'll reach out to local veteran services. As Patricia walked off, muttering about protocol breaches, Dr. Mitchell approached Duke with measured steps. So this is the guy who chased an ambulance. The dog didn't move, but his eyes tracked every sound in the room with alert precision. Frank's in surgery. Sarah said softly to Duke, feeling ridiculous for talking to a dog, yet needing Duke. The next few hours are going to be rough. Duke didn't bark or whine. He just lowered his head onto his paws, the tension in his body never quite releasing. I'll check in again soon, Sarah said, glancing toward Emma. Keep him calm. If Frank pulls through, having Duke close might be the anchor he needs. After Sarah left, Lisa sat beside Duke and opened her laptop. Let's learn more about who you are, buddy. While Lisa combed through records, Emma cleaned Duke's paws and refreshed his bandages. He drank a little, but still refused food. His eyes never strayed from the door, as if sheer will could summon Frank back. Here, Lisa said suddenly, turning her screen to Emma. Frank Holloway, Vietnam vet, 2 Purple Hearts, Bronze Star for Valor. They've both been through war. Lisa scrolled further. Post-war, he built a construction business Holloway building. Services, married. Had 1 son. Her voice dimmed. Then the company folded. Medical debt crushed it. Classic crash, said a quiet voice behind them. Roy had entered unnoticed. I've seen that spiral too many times. Lisa frowned. There's no record of a service dog, but there's an 8-month gap in his VA visits. Maybe that's when he found Duke, Emma suggested. Lisa nodded. I'm calling shelters. Somebody has to remember him. Just then, Dave showed up with a coffee. He wasn't on duty anymore, but something had tethered him to this story. Surgery, he asked. Ongoing? Emma replied. Dave lingered at the doorway, eyes on Duke. Can't believe he chased us the whole way. He remembers you, Lisa observed. Dave chuckled, uneasy. I tried to run him off more than once. Guess that backfired. You were doing your job, Lisa said. Dave took a knee, carefully. You're one stubborn dog, he offered his hand. Duke sniffed, then went back to watching the door. Emma grinned. You're officially part of the pack. Dave stood quickly, embarrassed. I'll check on Tony, make sure the rig's good to go. As he left, Lisa's phone rang. She picked up, listened, then hung up and turned to Emma. Shelter. 8 months ago, Frank adopted a German Shepherd scheduled to be put down, former military working dog, due to injury. So Duke's a soldier too, Emma whispered. The director remembered him. Said Frank looked homeless. Paid $300 his last money. Almost didn't allow it. But the connection between them, it changed everything. That's a fortune. When you're living on the street, Roy murmured. Lisa's voice caught. Frank told her, sometimes the only one who understands a broken soldier is another broken soldier. Time crawled. Volunteers rotated in, offering Duke food and comfort. He refused it all. Lisa made more calls. Emma checked in during breaks. Dave came back with a cheeseburger from the cafeteria. Not great, but better than nothing. He unwrapped it and set it down. Duke sniffed, then turned away. He won't eat, Lisa said. Not until he knows. Frank's okay, it's a trauma response. Happens with bonded dogs. Dave nodded, humbled. Smart dog, too smart for this world. 4 hours later, Dr. Mitchell returned, her face drawn with fatigue. Everyone fell silent. Frank made it, she said. A collective breath filled the room. But we're not out of the woods. Massive damage, he's in recovery. Unconscious. Lisa asked quietly, what's his prognosis? Sarah's voice wavered. If he survives the next 24 hours, there's hope, but he may never walk again. Speech could be impaired. His age, his health, makes it tough. Duke lifted his head, ears twitching. His eyes locked on Sarah. He didn't blink. What's next? Emma asked. We monitor him. In ICU, if he stabilizes, we plan long-term rehab. She paused, but with no permanent address, no insurance. It's complicated. I'm working on it, Lisa said firmly. There are vets groups with housing and rehab options. Sarah gave a faint smile. Good, because that dog isn't going anywhere. Kneeling beside Duke, Sarah gently stroked his fur. Your person's fighting real hard, she whispered. He's gonna need you, Duke. For the first time since collapsing, Duke let out a low whimper. Sarah glanced at Lisa. Is there any chance we could get Duke in to see Frank? Even for just a moment, sometimes someone familiar can reach through what medicine can't. I see you policy's pretty tight, Emma began. But Sarah cut income steady. Regulations can bend when the moment calls for it. Lisa gave a quick nod. I'll stay with Duke. You talk to Dr. Patel, maybe later tonight, when the halls are quiet. As Sarah moved off to resume her rounds, Lisa pulled a brush from her canvas tote and began working carefully through Duke's matted coat. Let's get you looking sharp for your big moment, she murmured. Though Duke submitted, his eyes never left the door. He was still on duty, still waiting, somewhere on another floor. Frank Holloway fought in silence, unaware that his companion, caked in mud and limping, had rallied a team of strangers around him. A social media post from Melissa Carpenter showing the dog chasing the ambulance had exploded online. Now, reporters buzzed outside the hospital, hungry for a story they'd already dubbed Riverdale's most loyal dog. Patricia Winters returned, this time flanked by the hospital's PR director. Her tone had softened. Ms. Thornton, she said, we're getting press inquiries about the dog and Mr. Holloway. We'd like to put out a statement, something respectful. Lisa smiled just a little. She recognized the shift. I'll help craft something that honors Frank's privacy while celebrating Duke's loyalty. As they talked strategy, Emma kept brushing Duke's coat, now gleaming faintly under the fluorescent lights. Rest now, she said, brushing a hand gently. Over his back, you've done more than enough. But your job's not over, buddy, just changing. Duke's body finally relaxed. He drifted off, his head turned toward the hallway, still listening for Frank. As dusk settled outside, long shadows cut across the break room window. The hospital, once a hive of impersonal routines, was quietly shifting. One dog's devotion had changed something fundamental, and the air-softened hearts slowed steps. Night fell. Riverdale Memorial dimmed to its nighttime rhythm-cool corridors, humming, fluorescent lights buzzing low. Nurse Denise Peterson checked Frank Holloway's vitals. He lay motionless, the right side of his face slacked from the stroke that nearly took him. You've got folks pulling for you, she whispered, adjusting his fore. A floor above, Dr. Sarah Mitchell rubbed her eyes and stared at Frank's chart. She'd been working 16 hours straight, but couldn't walk away. Something about this case the homeless vet, the loyal dog, had carved into her. Lisa appeared, in the lounge doorway with 2 coffees. Figured you could use the bad kind, she said, setting one down. Lifesaver, Sarah muttered, taking a sip. Any change in Duke? He ate some boiled chicken, Lisa reported. Paws look better, but he's restless, wants to search. Emma's calming him down. Sarah frowned at Frank's chart. His intracranial pressure is stable for now, but the next few hours. Lisa sat across from her. I did some digging. Did you know Frank got a Bronze Star? Saved 4 guys from an ambush? Sarah blinked. Seriously? Never told anyone. Typical vet. Used to own a construction company. 30 years. Lost everything when his wife got cancer, spent his savings on treatment, ended up homeless. Sarah's voice dropped. Happens too often. VA lost contact with him 8 months ago, about the same time he found Duke. Sarah's brow furrowed. That lines up. Lisa set her cup down, about letting Duke see him. Sarah checked her watch. Now's our window. Shift just changed. Patel's in surgery. The night supervisor's someone I trust. She hesitated. Frank's fragile one jolt could. Duke's military trained, Lisa said. He won't make a sound. Sarah stood. Okay, we'll make it quick. 10 minutes. First sign of trouble, he's out. They moved fast through quiet back halls, slipping like shadows. In the break room, Duke sat alert, tail curled neatly, eyes locked on the doorway. His coat was clean now. He looked ready. Duke, Lisa called softly. The shepherd's ears twitched. He rose, slow but sharp, at the sound of his person's name. Sarah knelt in front of him. You have to stay calm. No barking, no jumping. Frank's in bad shape. Understand? Duke stared straight into her eyes. The intelligence behind that look made Sarah swallow hard. I'll take that as a yes. She turned to Emma. Here, just in case. Emma nodded. Good luck. Lisa tied a soft leash from gauze. Let's move. Through service elevators and back corridors, they moved like a covert team. Duke padding gently beside Lisa. His steps were careful, but there was urgency in his gait, like he knew how much this mattered. At the ICU door, Sarah swiped her badge. Absolute quiet, she said, voice low. Inside, the unit was dim. The only sounds a gentle beeping and machines breathing for others. Denise looked up, startled, then softened as Sarah raised a finger to her lips and explained. They approached slowly. Frank lay in a cocoon of machines. Oxygen hissed softly, IVS dripping, his pale skin waxy against the sheets. And Duke didn't bark. Didn't move too fast. He walked to the bedside and lowered himself carefully, resting his chin on the edge of the mattress. One paw lifted, reaching gently toward Frank's hand. Nothing stirred. Not at first, then Frank's fingers twitched. Just once, everyone froze, and then barely audible a raspy exhale. From the man on the bed, Denise's eyes widened. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth. Duke, still silent, stayed completely still. His eyes locked on Frank's face like he'd been summoned across time in that moment. Nobody spoke. Not a nurse, not a doctor, not even Duke, because something sacred was unfolding. Something no machine could measure, no protocol could predict. It wasn't a miracle. It was love. Old and tested, and it had just walked back into the room. ChatGPT Gnoi, kneeling beside Duke. Lisa whispered softly, "You're humans fighting, boy, but he's gonna need you now more than ever." For the first time since he'd collapsed, Duke let out a low whimper, quiet, but full of longing. Sarah looked to Lisa. Is there any way we can bring him in, even for a moment? Familiar scents, sounds that can spark something in comatose patients. ICU rules are strict, Emma began, but Sarah cut in gently. They can be flexible in special cases. I'll talk to Dr. Patel if we wait for the night shift when it's quieter. Lisa nodded. I'll stay with him. Sarah stepped out to continue rounds. Emma pulled a brush from her tote and began working through the crusted dirt on Duke's coat. Let's clean you up for your big moment, she murmured. The shepherd remained still under her care, but his eyes never left the break room door, his silent vigil for the one who hadn't returned. Somewhere in the ICU, Frank Holloway fought a silent war, unaware that his bond with a dog had rallied an entire floor of nurses, doctors, and strangers around them. Outside, the story was catching fire. Melissa Carpenter's post about the dog chasing the ambulance had gone viral. News vans now filled the parking lot, reporters circling like hawks, eager for a glimpse of what locals were calling Riverdale's most loyal dog. Patricia Winters returned, no longer stern, this time flanked by the hospital's PR director. Ms. Thornton, we've received a wave of press interest about Mr. Holloway and his dog, the director said, his voice careful. We'd like to release a statement. Can you help us balance privacy and the story? Lisa offered a faint smile, noting the tone shift. Absolutely. We can highlight Duke's journey without revealing Frank's medical details. As they fine-tuned the messaging, Emma kept brushing Duke, whose eyes were now half-lidded with fatigue. Sleep, she coaxed gently. You'll need strength soon. He's not out of the woods yet. Duke finally let go, breathing deep. But even in slumber, his body faced the dooring card to the man he loved. Outside, the last light of day slid behind the hills, casting the break room in twilight. And in a hospital, once governed by routine, a dog's devotion had stirred something far greater than protocol. By midnight, Riverdale Memorial had quieted into its usual night rhythm. The lights in the ICU buzzed softly, and Nurse Denise Peterson moved silently between beds. At Frank's side, she adjusted his IV and checked vitals. His face was slack. Right side paralyzed, a cruel reminder of how close they'd come to losing him. You've got a whole crowd pulling for you, she whispered. A few rooms down, Dr. Sarah Mitchell studied Frank's labs with tired eyes. She'd been on her feet 16 hours but refused to leave. Something about this cased a soldier. The dog had pierced her armor. Lisa appeared in the doorway, holding 2 steaming cups of vending machine coffee. Thought you might need this. You're a saint, Sarah said, taking a sip. Any change with Duke. He finally ate a little. We gave him antibiotics for his paws. He's calm, but keeps trying to search the halls. Emma's with him. Sarah nodded. Frank's intracranial pressure is still high, but stable. The next few hours are key. Lisa took a seat. I've been digging. Found out Frank earned a Bronze Star, saved 4 men in an ambush. Sarah looked up. He never mentioned it. His VA counselor says that's typical for guys like him. He ran a solid construction company for decades. Lost it all, caring for his wife during cancer. Insurance ran out, and he drained everything for her treatments. After she passed, he disappeared. And that's when he adopted Duke Sarah. Said quietly. Lisa nodded. Right around then, about our visit, do we still have a window? Sarah checked her watch. Now's perfect. Shift just changed. Dr. Patel's in surgery, and the supervisor tonight is someone I trust. But Frank's fragile. Any stress could be dangerous. Duke's got training, Lisa assured. He won't bark or jump. Sarah nodded, resolve setting in. 10 minutes, max. If anything goes wrong, he leaves. They moved fast through the back corridors, Emma waiting with Duke in the break room. He rose at the sound of Lisa's voice. Duke, she called gently. His ears lifted. Want to see Frank? The shepherd stood immediately, posture alert despite his injuries. Sarah knelt face to face with him. You have to be calm, buddy. Frank is really sick. You understand. His eyes locked with hers, steady and unblinking. I'll take that as a yes, she said. Emma, stay close. If we need to pull out fast, I'm here, Emma confirmed. Lisa tied a makeshift leash of surgical gauze around Duke's collar. Ready together, they crept through the darkened hospital like a secret mission, quiet, invisible. Duke limped, but moved with purpose, his paws soft on the linoleum. At the ICU entrance, Sarah swiped her badge. Silence, she whispered. The unit was hushed, save for beeping monitors and the steady rhythm of breath machines. Denise looked up, startled. Sarah held a finger to her lips and mouthed, "Just a minute." Denise's expression softened, and she gave a small nod. Approached Frank's bed slowly. The room smelled of antiseptic and quiet grief. He lay motionless, oxygen line in his nose, tubes feeding medicine into his veins. Pale, fragile, his life held together by machines. Duke stood frozen, ears tilted, absorbing the scent, the presence. A tremble passed through him. Lisa loosened the leash, and the shepherd stepped forward cautiously, placing his head gently. On the edge of the bed, no bark, no movement, just breath, one living soul. Frank stirred. Not much, but enough. A twitch in his fingers. A flicker of eyelid. Denise gasped. His vitals, they're shifting. Sarah leaned in. Talk to him, Lisa. Lisa stepped closer. Frank, you've got a visitor. He never gave up on you. Frank's hand twitched again. Duke stayed perfectly still, his eyes locked on the man who'd once saved him. The machines beeped slightly faster. A new rhythm, a new thread of hope. In the stillness, something passed between man and dog. Something no scan could measure. Not words, not science, just love. And for the first time in days, the ICU breathed a little easier. The hospital pillows sagged on one side, creased and pale. Duke halted at the foot of the bed, alert but calm, his posture stiff with tension. He sniffed once, picking up the sterile scent of antiseptic layered with something else, something familiar. A soft whimper rose from his throat before he swallowed it back. You're all right, Lisa murmured, running her fingers through his fur. Frank's still with us. Sarah double-checked the monitors, nodding slowly as she examined the screens. No changes, she muttered. Wait his brain activity. It's slightly increasing. Her eyes narrowed, focusing on the subtle spike dancing across the EEG lines. That could mean something. With delicate purpose, Duke leaned in and gently placed his nose on the back of Frank's limp hand, which hung just over the edge of the mattress. He paused there, unmoving, then slowly lifted his gaze to Frank's face, ears cocked forward, scanning for any response. I've read about dogs doing this, Sarah said under her breath. Yeah, Lisa replied, voice strained, especially combat dogs. They're trained to stay with injured handlers like this. Minutes crawled by. Duke remained motionless, except for the occasional nudge of his nose against Frank's hand. His eyes followed every slow rise of Frank's chest, as if tracking each breath counted as hope. Then something shifted barely. The heart monitor showed a jump. a subtle twitch in Frank's fingers right where Duke had touched him. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered. He moved. The lines on the EEG lit up with new motion patterns where there had been silence. "Something's registering," she murmured, unable to look away. Lisa grabbed her arm tightly, blinking fast. "It's Duke. He's reaching him." The dog's ears perked up. He inched forward, his nose hovering just above Frank's wrist. A sound rumbled from him, half whimper, half growl, barely louder than the hum of the machines. Frank's eyelids flickered once. Then again, this time more clearly, the twitch. In his hand returned more deliberate. "Frank," Sarah said softly, moving to the other side of the bed. "Can you hear me?" The monitors reacted, heart rate climbing, blood pressure rising, brain waves shifting toward signs of consciousness. "He's coming back," Lisa breathed. "Duke found him." Sarah leaned closer, her voice trembling. "Frank, Duke's here. He followed the ambulance. He's been searching for you." At the sound of his name, Frank's lashes fluttered again. His lips parted slightly, as if trying to form a word. Duke remained rooted to the floor, perfectly still, though his body buzzed with restrained excitement. His tail wagged once, just once, then went still again. "My God," whispered Denise, who had stepped in unnoticed, drawn by the changes. "On the screen, this is beyond anything I've seen." For a moment, time held its breath. Frank never opened his eyes, but his body responded clearly, impossibly, to the German Shepherd at his side. New spikes on the monitors. The brains. Attempt to reach back. A bond refusing to break. Then it happened. The moment cracked. One of the monitors emitted a sharp, relentless beep. The heart rate was collapsing. "He's crashing," Sarah snapped. "BP's falling fast." Denise was already reaching for the emergency cart. Lisa tried to coax the dog back with a gentle tug on the leash. Duke wouldn't budge. His eyes locked on Frank's paling face. "Come on, Duke," she said more firmly now, slipping into the voice of command she once used in field training. The dog quivered, caught between instinct and training. "Code Blue, ICU Room 4. Denise barked into the overhead intercom. Sarah dropped the bed flat, rolling up her sleeves. "Lisa, go, move him." Lisa slid her arm around Duke's chest, trying to guide him back. "Frank needs help. You did your part. Let them take it from here." Finally, Duke gave in, stepping back with visible pain. His whole body drooped as he was pulled from the room. The doors swung shut behind them. And then, echoing down it turned every head in the hall. "I know, baby," Lisa said, kneeling beside him. Her hand trembled as she held his collar. "I know it hurts." Inside, chaos reigned. "Push," Sarah ordered, hands already positioned over Frank's chest. She began compressions, counting under her breath. "Come on, Frank!" Thump! Thump! The monitors stayed flat. "Don't leave him now. Don't you dare." Outside, Duke was pacing in tight, frantic loops, his bandaged paws sliding on the tile floor. Lisa kept whispering to him, trying to anchor him. That's when Emma arrived. She'd heard the emergency call through the loudspeaker. "What's happening?" she asked, breathless. "He was responding to Duke," Lisa explained quickly. But then everything crashed. Emma's eyes widened. Duke stopped pacing, froze, his head lifted sharply, ears rigid, like he was hearing something none of them could. Then, a second howl louder, higher roar burst from his chest. "Duke, hush!" Lisa pleaded, her voice breaking. Back inside, the monitor was still flat. "No cardiac rhythm," the resident reported. 15 minutes into CPR, Sarah didn't pause. Her hands kept working, more epi now, and someone get an ultrasound check for internal pressure. The technician wheeled the machine into place, gliding the wand over Frank's chest. The screen lit up. "No fluid," came the reply. Sarah squinted at the display, shifted the wand's angle. "Wait, hold up." She leaned in. "There's something here. That shadow looks like a clot. 50 milligrams for push. Then start the drip. We don't have time." "But what about do it?" she barked. As the clot-busting medication flowed into Frank's veins, Sarah kept the compressions going, sweat dripping from her forehead. "You hear me, Frank?" she whispered. "That dog ran 10 miles to find you. You better fight for him." Outside, Duke had stopped howling. He stood frozen, alert. Every fiber of him tuned to something they couldn't perceive. Lisa and Emma exchanged a glance. Something had changed. "Duke?" Lisa asked, but he didn't turn suddenly. His body folded. He dropped like a stone. Emma yelped and dropped to her knees beside him. "Pulse is fast, too fast. I think he's going into shock." She muttered. "We need help out here," she shouted. But just then, inside the ICU, hope returned. "We've got something," the resident said, astonished. The monitor blipped once. "Then again, he's coming back," Denise murmured. Sustained rhythm beginning. Sarah didn't stop compressions. "Keep the drip going," she said, not daring to let go. The erratic beats slowly began to stabilize. "Blood pressure's climbing," Denise added. "We might actually be getting him back. 65 systolic and climbing." Sarah finally stopped chest compressions, eyes fixed on the heart monitor, breath caught in her throat. A faint rhythm pulsed across the screen, fragile but real. "He's back," she whispered, the tension breaking just enough for a tremor of relief to pass through her. "Get cardiology down here now. And neurology, we need a full reassessment post-EP." As the ICU team scrambled to stabilize Frank's fragile heartbeat, no one noticed the German Shepherd just outside the trauma bay collapsing to the linoleum with a quiet, thudding, eerie synchronicity playing out between man and dog, as if one. The waiting area outside the intensive care unit had morphed into a chaotic war room. Lisa hunched over her laptop, dark circles sinking into her skin like bruises from a sleepless night. Dave had returned at first light, balancing 3 coffees and untouched breakfast wraps on a tray. In the corner, local vet Dr. Melissa Carlin knelt beside Duke, who was stretched out on a pile of folded hospital blankets. His breathing was shallow, his eyes dull. "Vitals are holding, but something's not right," Dr. Carlin said softly, slipping her stethoscope back into her bag. "Pa, wounds are healing, fluids are helping, but he's distant. Flat? Could this be psychological?" Lisa asked. "I mean the trauma, the separation." Dr. Carlin gave a half nod. "Dogs experience grief, loss. But this feels like more, almost like he's mirroring his human's condition." She gently ran her fingers over Duke's head, her voice heavy with concern. "Like he's riding out the same storm." Lisa leaned in. "What should we do?" The vet sighed. "Keep him stable, finish the antibiotics and fluids, but if you want my honest opinion, his healing depends on Frank's. They're connected." Everyone glanced toward the ICU doors, still tightly shut since Frank's crash hours earlier. Updates had been rare and always brief. Lisa exhaled. "Still, touch and go. The TPA dissolved the clot, but it's risky with his stroke history. Could cause a brain bleed." Dave shifted, restless. "I was there when it happened." Duke knew. Before any monitor went off, before Sarah even moved, he knew. Then he just drops. The same minute, Frank's heart stops. "That ain't random." Emma nodded slowly. "It's not unheard of. Military K-9 South, some of them pick up on seizures or cardiac." Just then, the ICU door creaked open, and Sarah stepped out, looking utterly depleted. She'd been on shift more than 24 hours. "He's hanging in," she murmured, accepting a coffee from Lisa. "Clot's gone, heart's beating. But he's still critical. The bleeding risk is real." "What now?" Dave asked, his voice gravelly. Sarah sank into a chair, rubbing her forehead. "Now we hope, we monitor. It's like he's waiting for Frank." Sarah frowned, processing. "You think he's synchronized?" "That's the word I'd use," the vet said. Emma hesitated. "Is there any way they can see each other, even briefly?" "Too dangerous," Sarah said quickly, Hanks hanging by a thread. Any stress, anything unexpected, could send him spiraling. Just then, Lisa's phone vibrated. She excused herself to the hall. When she returned, her face was pale. "Animal control," she said flatly. "They got a complaint. Someone on staff filed a report last night, said Duke was dangerous. He scared patients. They're sending officers to remove him." Dangerous. Lisa looked weary. Apparently, the howling upset people. The report accuses him of aggression. And by law, that's enough. They'll remove him by force if we don't comply within the hour. Dave clenched his fists. "That's outrageous. He wasn't attacking, he was mourning." Lisa nodded grimly. "Doesn't matter. County regulations are strict. Without a handler present, he's considered unclaimed, and shelters are packed if they take him in. Odds are, he doesn't make it out. Emma looked at Duke, her throat tight. No, we're not letting that happen. There has to be somewhere someone. I've tried every boarding facility within 30 miles, Lisa said. Holiday weekend, they're full. Closest available is in Phoenix, but they won't take him without vaccine records and a signed consent from Frank. Dr. Carlin cleared her throat. I can take him. My clinic isn't ideal, but I can hold him for 48 hours. That's it. The room fell quiet. Duke stirred faintly, his ears twitching as though sensing the despair around him. Lisa, Emma, said gently, "What about your place? Just for the weekend." Lisa winced. "My landlord has a no-pets clause. I'd be evicted." Then surprisingly, Dave spoke up. "He can come to my place." Everyone turned. "You," Emma said, eyebrows raised. "You're terrified of dogs." Dave scratched the back of his neck. "Yeah, well, I guess this one earned some grace. I've got a fenced yard. He'll be safe. It's not perfect, but it's something." Before anyone could thank him, a sharp voice rang out. Patricia Winters appeared, flanked by hospital security and a stern woman in county uniform. "Miss Thornton," Patricia began, "this is Officer Jenkins. She's here about the dog." The officer stepped forward with a clipboard. "We've received a removal order for a German Shepherd being harbored without authorization." Lisa rose calmly. "He's a certified service animal. His handler is in critical condition. ADA law applies here." "Not without documentation," Jenkins replied flatly. "And I have sworn statements detailing aggressive behavior, last night howling, resisting staff." Dr. Carlin stepped in. He was reacting to a medical emergency. "I'm a licensed vet, and I can vouch his behavior was normal, even restrained." Jenkins didn't blink. "That's not for me to decide. My instructions are to remove the animal immediately. If the owner regains consciousness, he can go through the proper channels to reclaim his dog. But if he doesn't," Dave pressed, his voice low. The officer didn't answer, just shifted uncomfortably. That silence was louder than anything. Lisa stepped in, pleading. "This dog Dookie's all Frank has left. He's a decorated Vietnam vet who gave up everything to care for his dying wife, and now what? We're tearing away the last thing that gives his life meaning." Officer Jenkins' stance softened, her tone more careful. "I get that it's hard, but the rules are there for a reason. Patient safety comes first. The dog has to be removed." "I'll take him, Dave," said firmer now. "I work for the county. Paramedic, Riverdale. EMS. I can sign whatever paperwork you need." Officer Jenkins checked her clipboard, flipping pages. "We'd need evidence you can safely house the animal. And you'd need to accept full legal liability incident. It's on you." "Done," Dave said, no hesitation in his voice. Patricia's shoulders relaxed slightly, grateful for any option that didn't involve force. From the side, Sarah stepped closer. Voice urgent. "Before you do anything, I need to examine Frank. His condition tanked after Duke was taken last night. There's a real clinical reason to keep them close." Dr. Mitchell Patricia said, measured, "I hear you, but the hospital has a legal obligation. We can't ignore that without the right paperwork." "Then, at least let me track his vitals during the transfer," Sarah pushed. "If we see any decline, we reevaluate immediately." Patricia sighed, relenting. "Fine, you've got half an hour to prep the dog and observe your patient." As Jenkins and the others moved to finish the forms, the group gathered around Duke. The shepherd had lifted his head, clearly sensing the tension in the room. Something was happening, Dan, he knew it. "I don't even have a dog bowl at my place," Dave said quietly. "Didn't think I'd need one." "I've got you," said Dr. Carlin. "I'll grab some essentials food meds for his paw's end. I'll check back in. I'll call every veteran support group in the state," Lisa added. "Someone has to have resources for this." Emma crouched beside Duke, her hand brushing gently over his head. "This is just for now, boy, until Frank's better." Duke's tired eyes, locked with hers, deep with something more than instinct. He slowly sat up, composed and steady, the soldier in him not quite gone. While Sarah returned to check on Frank, Lisa helped Dave with the paperwork, and Carlin dashed off to gather supplies. 15 minutes later, Sarah came back, her face grim. "Frank's blood pressure is unstable," she said, and brainwaves shifted. The second I mentioned Duke, he knows, somehow, he knows we're taking him away. We don't have a choice, Lisa said, voice breaking, but at least Duke will be with someone who understands. Officer Jenkins returned, flanked by 2 uniformed officers holding a crate. It's time, she said. Duke heard the finality. He rose slowly, his legs steadier, and looked toward the ICU. A low whine escaped him. Can he say goodbye? Emma asked. Barely thinking, just at the door, Frank might feel it. Jenkins paused, then nodded. 30 seconds, no entry into the unit. Lisa walked Duke to the ICU doors. Sarah cracked them open. Duke stood tall, eyes locked on the bed inside Frank. Duke's here, Sarah called gently. He's going somewhere safe until you're better. Frank didn't move, but the machines beside him shifted. His pulse ticked upward. Brain activity nudged higher. Sarah leaned closer to Lisa. He knows. I swear, he knows. After the moment passed, Dave gently took Duke's leash. The dog followed quietly, but his gaze never left those doors until they were fully out of view. Down the halls they walked past nurses and visitors who whispered stories about the war hero dog that chased an ambulance. Duke walked with solemn purpose beside Dave, limping but proud, in the parking lot. As the animal control officers moved toward him with the crate, Duke suddenly halted. Tenzing, he has to be crated, Jenkins said. That's protocol. Dave glanced at Duke's rigid frame, then shook his head. No crate. He rides up front with me. I'll sign whatever you want. Jenkins studied him a beat, then exhaled. Hope your insurance is good. She held out another form. Sign this. It says you're rejecting recommended transport. Dave scribbled his name, then opened the passenger door. Come on, Duke, let's go home. The word home hit something in Duke. He turned one last glance at the hospital, then climbed into the cab with that same steady grace. He sat at attention, like it was a mission. As Dave turned the key, he murmured, It's just for now, buddy. We'll get you back to Frank soon. But his voice didn't quite match the worry in his eyes. They pulled away from Riverdale Memorial, leaving behind a man who hadn't been alone in years, and a dog who'd been more than just company. In Dave's small backyard, the late sun cut long lines across the grass. Dave murmured as Emma joined him with takeout in hand. Not even a little. He's worried, Emma replied, setting down the containers. And with someone he doesn't know, everything's unfamiliar. Dave opened the back door. Come on, Duke. Time to eat. The shepherd looked over but didn't move. He stayed seated, like a sentry at post. Still not eating? Dave muttered. That's a full day now. Call Dr. Carlin if he skips another meal, Emma advised, peering through the screen. But honestly, he's on duty. In his mind, Frank's not safe, so he won't rest. Just then, Dave's phone rang. It was Lisa. An update. He answered, listening carefully as the mood in his face began to change. The tension was building. With each tick of the clock, how's Frank? Emma asked once Dave ended the call. Not good, he said heavily. They've upped his meds just to keep his blood. Pressure from crashing, Sarah mentioned his neurological responses aren't matching the baseline anymore. She's convinced it's tied to Duke. Being away, Dave sighed deeply. She can't prove it with science, but the timeline lines up. Frank was stable when Duke was there, then took a nosedive as soon as they were separated. Any progress finding Duke a permanent placement? Emma pressed. Veterans groups all hit dead ends, Dave muttered. Some have 6-month wait lists. Others won't even talk without a formal owner application. He raked his fingers through his hair in frustration. It's like the system's built to keep them apart instead of together. Outside, Duke had perked up again, his ears twitching at some sound far off that only he seemed to catch. He walked to the fence, posture rigid, eyes locked down the street, then let out a soft whimper. What's he hearing? Emma asked before Dave could reply. Duke suddenly began clawing at the dirt beneath the fence, frantic, his bandaged paws slamming into the ground with reckless intensity. Duke, hey! Dave bolted. Outside, alarmed by the outburst, stop. The shepherd ignored him completely, his focus laser sharp on digging away out of the yard. Blood seeped through the gauze on his paws as he reopened half-healed wounds. Dave hesitated, keeping his distance. Still unsure how far he could push this fragile trust. Duke, no, he barked firmly, imitating Lisa's command tone. Halt, but the dog Barely registered, it just flicked a glance back at Dave, full of such raw urgency that Dave involuntarily stepped back. Before the dog went back to tearing at the earth, he's going to wreck himself, Emma said as she rushed outside, joining Dave. We've got to stop him. Dave moved in low, trying to grab Duke's collar, but the shepherd twisted away too. Fast for a sedated animal, for the next 10 minutes, they threw everything they had at him, treats balls. Voice commands, nothing could pull his mind off whatever had triggered this escape frenzy. I'm calling Dr. Carlin, Emma declared, pulling out her phone. If he keeps this up, he's going to rip his feet open completely. While she dialed, Dave crouched a few feet away from the desperate animal. What are you trying to tell us, boy? What's out there? Duke paused again, ears tilted forward toward the street, his body humming with tension. Then, with renewed frenzy, he dug harder this time, pushing his shoulder under the fence. Not today, Dave muttered, dashing to the garage and returning with chicken wire. He secured it tightly. Over the widening hole, Duke let out a frustrated growl, the first sound that held true aggression, and pivoted to a new spot. Dr. Carlin pulled up 20 minutes later, medical bag slung over her shoulder. By then, Duke had already attempted 3 new exits, his paws red and torn again, his legs trembling from the effort. This kind of behavior's way off the charts, she said, prepping a sedative. He's beyond normal stress. Something's clearly triggered him. Can we calm him down without knocking him out cold? Dave asked, holding Duke's collar while the dog pulled toward the fence. I don't want him waking up in some panicked haze. I'll go low and slow, she agreed, approaching carefully. The shepherd barely noticed the needle, his brain locked on escape. Even as the sedative crept through his veins, he kept struggling until his muscles began to slacken. Even then, his eyes remained alert, fixed on the horizon. Just then, Dave's phone rang again. Sarah's voice was taut with panic. Frank's tanking, she said without pause. We had to intubate him. His vitals are in free fall. Lisa's pushing to bring Duke in under compassionate care, but admin's stalling. Dave turned to look at Duke, who now lay in the grass, twitching under the sedative. His eyes never left the direction of the hospital. He knows, Dave murmured suddenly. He knows Frank's in trouble. That's why he's losing it. Dogs can't sense things like that. Dr. Carlin started, then hesitated, clearly shaken herself. I'm done debating it, Dave snapped. This dog is bonded to Frank in a way none of us understands, and he's trying to get back to him. I'm not waiting for clearance, Dave. That's Emma began, but he was already lifting the heavy shepherd into his arms. Dr. Carlin, can you follow with your meds, Emma? Call Lisa, tell her we're en route. Tell her to meet us at the service entrance, East Wing. No cameras, no traffic. Within minutes, they were barreling down the road toward Riverdale Memorial. Duke sprawled in the back seat, eyes wide awake, breathing shallow but steady, like he knew where they were headed. Hold on, buddy, Dave whispered, pressing the gas. We're bringing you home at the hospital. Lisa was pacing outside the side entrance, her face taut with nerves. The moment she saw Dave's truck, she exhaled sharply. Thank God, she breathed, racing to meet them. Frank's crashing hard. If he doesn't respond soon, they'll shift to comfort care and pull life-saving measures, which means they're giving up, Dave said darkly, hoisting Duke gently from the back seat. The dog's head drooped on Dave's shoulder, but his body remained tense. How are we pulling this off? Emma asked, glancing around service elevator 2-3, then backstairs to ICU. Lisa rattled off quickly. Sarah's got the inside covered. Patricia's tied up in a board meeting for another hour. And security's blind on our route. I called in a favor. Dave nodded, impressed. Then let's move. They slipped into the hospital's rear corridor, weaving past janitors and interns, none of whom dared question Lisa's determined stride. Duke didn't fight or flinch, just kept his composure, calm and quiet. Like a soldier on mission. By the time they reached the ICU's back staff entrance, Sarah was already holding the door open, her face drawn tight. Hurry, she said, under her breath. Ease slipping fast inside the dimmed ICU unit. Machines hummed with urgency monitors beeping in erratic rhythms. A temporary screen shielded Frank's bed from view. As they approached, Dave's breath caught. Frank lay motionless, the breathing tube obscuring most of his face, pale and gaunt against the stark white bedding. Multiple ives fed into him like vines into brittle soil. The sheer number of interventions made one thing clear: they were losing him fast. Monitors blinked erratically. Blood pressure too low, heart barely holding rhythm. We're violating a dozen hospital policies right now, Sarah muttered under her breath, glancing at the ICU doors to make sure no one had noticed. I've run out of clinical options, Dave whispered as he eased Duke down beside Frank's bed. The old shepherd still groggy from sedation, stirred when he smelled Frank with visible effort. Duke dragged himself upright, his body quivering but his gaze locked on the man. He loved Sarah, stared at the vitals monitor. Her brow furrowing, his heart rates evening out. She whispered in awe, blood pressures inching upward. Duke let out a low whimper, reaching toward Frank's limp hand dangling from the bed gear. Carlin stepped forward and gently lifted Duke's front paws onto the mattress. Letting him connect with a reverence beyond words, Duke pressed his snout against Frank's palm and didn't move. His breath came slow and steady. Eyes never leaving Frank's face, made a strange sound, half whine, half hum, a vibration of love and need. Check the EEG, Sarah breathed, pointing to the monitor. His neural activity is changing. Fast, everyone watched in silence as Frank's vitals began to stabilize. Irregular spikes flattened into smooth. Lynicious blood pressure climbed thin, impossibly. Frank's fingers twitched against Duke's muzzle. Duke responded instantly. Another soft vocalization, deeper, this time pressed in, gently urging connection. Frank. Sarah leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. Can you hear me? Duke's Herette came for you, Frank's. Eyelids flutter, his fingers curled, just a little. Into the dog's fur. This is extraordinary, Dr. Carlin said softly. There's therapeutic presence, and then there's this is something else. It's like they're bound. Lisa Muredov, normally, the skeptic in the group, couldn't speak. His eyes flicked between the dog and the match. Nesaviri thing was changing Gand. It had started the moment Duke touched him. Hush was broken by footsteps and a shrill voice. There is an unauthorized animal in ICU. This is a violation of every regulation we have. Patricia Winters stormed into the hallway, voice rising. Damn, Sarah hissed. She's early. Lisa stepped away from the bed. I'll deal with her. Didn't move Duke an inch, she intercepted Patricia, drawing her into a sharp exchange behind the curtain. Sarah checked the screen again. We're buying seconds, not minutes, she warned, but his neural responses, their Relthier climbing through it all. Duke remained still in Chereticus, if his very presence was the medicine Frank needeth. Chaos around him didn't matter, not the alarm snot, the Arguinganly, the man in the bed. Patricia's voice escalated. This ends. Now security is en Rutethi animal, leave us immediately. Lisa's reply was low, firm, unreadable. Dave braced for confrontation, but Dr. Carlin caught his arm, whispering, look, Frank. Frank's eyes opened just a sliver, just enough to show awareness. His pupils moved, dazed, then locked onto Dekahi's lips. Moved, Borrelia soundless whisper. Frank, Sarah said gently, crouching close, if you understand. Blink. He blinked on. Suitable voice broke as she continued. Duke is hooray, found you, followed the ambulance all the way here. A tear slid from the corner of Frank's eye. His hand shifted. Agan. Duke adjusted, nestling his head beneath Etha's contact, grounded them both. Frank's breathing depended. His eyes opened wider. Patricia burst around the curtain, flanked by two security officers. Her protests died mid-sentenced. Sight before her. Frank awake, hand resting on the dog stole, her breath. What is going on? She asked, her tone slipping from furious to confused. Sarah stood tall, the authority of years behind her. What's going on? She said. Is that this dog just accomplished what no drug, no machine, no intervention couldn't. 10 minutes, Frank. Holloway went from critical failure to cognitive awareness. Patricia turned to the monitor. Hard lines of protocol in her mind wavered against the undeniable truth on the screen. This is irregular, with all due respect. Dave cut in, surprising even himself. Sometimes irregular saves lives. One of the guards stepped forward, staring at Frank and Duke. Wait, he said, is that Frank Holloway? Lisa turned. You know him? The guard, his badge reading Michael Townsend, nodded slowly. Staff Sergeant, 173rd Airborne, Vietnam. Frank Holloway saved my dad's life. His name was James Townsend. Frank carried him 3 miles after a tunnel. Galopsia is the reason I exist. The air in the room thickened with memory time, folded in on itself. A moment of history. Standing still, Patricia's face softened. Esh looked from Frank to Michael Than to Duke. Mr. Townsend, she said finally, maybe you can help us navigate this mething that honors both the rules and the miracle we're witnessing. They began speaking quietly. Sarah, as attention turned back to the machiniot, chimed softly and alert. But not Dengersh read the data. Smiled. His cranial pressure is stabilizing. Guggen saturations high enough. We Might be able to pull the tube soon. Duke gave a quiet sigh-nod of exhaustion but relief mission, the impossible instinct that had pulled him across highways and through double doors. Wasn't Donabot for the first time since Frank had collapsed. Under that sycamore tree, there was light ahead 4 weeks later. Westfield Park basked in autumn's glowed trees, swayed gently, golden leaves catching sun like fire. Frank sat on a bench beneath the sycamoria, blanket across his lap, his hand resting on Duke's head, same place it had first landed when he came back to life, given a second shot at life. He sat on a faded bench near the old church. Playground posture, slightly slumped from the stroke that had wrecked his right side. The limb still numb and heavy across his lap, a wooden cane leaned against the bench, chipped from use but reliable like the man himself at his feet. Tank rested calm but watchful, his coat radiant in the golden slant of autumn light, his deep brown eyes flicking regularly toward his partner. Pretty day, huh, Tank? Frank murmured, his words still tinged with a drawl of old southern Georgia and a slur that Rahab hadn't yet fully erased. Reminds me of those crisp mornings outside Laredo before I got drafted. You remember me telling you about that, huh? Tank's ears twitched at the sound of his name, his tail brushing the ground in lazy strokes. The big German Shepherd wore a snug service vest embroidered with patches that read, "Medical Alert Dog." Veteran assistance. The badge had come fast, thanks to a nonprofit for injured vets. After Tank's incredible actions at the VA hospital, Frank glanced down at his watch, a clunky old digital one with a glowing green screen, easier on his damaged vision. Almost time, he said quietly. Maria said she'd meet us here at one. Barely finished the sentence before Tank's head popped up, eyes pinned to the park entrance. He'd been trained at the rehab facility to respond to familiar names like Maria, who had spent countless hours helping Frank learn how to walk again, tie his boots again, live again. There she is. Frank grinned as her figure appeared in the distance. Tank rose at once, posture straight but restrained, waiting for the cue before greeting her. She approached, smiling in jeans and a light sweater instead of scrubs. Punctual, as always, she called, "How you doing today, Frank?" "Better than yesterday, not as good as I will be tomorrow," he replied, quoting what had become his daily affirmation with effort. He pressed upward, leaning hard on his cane. Tank instantly moved to his left flank, lending balance with silent precision. "Your voice is clearer," Maria noted warmly, the doctor and her always assessing, "and you're walking taller." Frank nodded proudly. "I did 25 minutes this morning on the rails. Rehab says I'm ahead of schedule." Maria beamed. "I'm not surprised with your stubbornness." And Tank's help. She knelt and scratched behind the shepherd's ear. He closed his eyes in quiet bliss. "Hello, handsome. You still guarding this old soldier?" They started toward the walking trail, shaded by oaks and cottonwoods. This weekly stroll had become more than therapy. It was ritual, a thread of normalcy. After chaos, they moved slowly, Frank's steps unsteady but better than last time, and Tank perfectly in sync, ears always attuned to every falter or breath shift. "I talked to Alina this morning," Frank said as they walked. "She signed the lease on the apartment. We're moving in Monday." "That's amazing news," Maria said sincerely. "The place near the vet center?" Frank nodded. "First floor, easy access porch out back for Tank Plus. The rent's covered through that support fund." Shook his head. "Still can't wrap my brain around it." Came together fast. Maria smiled, remembering it had been Officer Morales who'd made the call, the same cop whose Uncle Frank had pulled from a flipped Humvee in Iraq. Turns out gratitude runs deep. Once the connection clicked, Morales made it happen, cut through the red tape like butter. "Have you seen the place yet?" Maria asked. Frank nodded. "Yesterday with Alina. Not fancy but clean, secure. First real roof Tank and I have had in years." They reached a small man-made pond, ducks drifting lazily as wind rippled across the surface. Frank exhaled and sat heavily on the bench. Tank lay down again, immediately alert despite the calm. "Can I ask you something?" Maria said after a stretch of quiet that night in the ICU. When Tank returned, she paused, still wrestling with what she'd seen. "How did you know he'd come back?" Frank chuckled, the sound rough but sincere, hard to say, too. "Someone who lives by charts and numbers." "Try me," Maria urged. "I've been learning to listen beyond the noise lately." Frank stared across the water, gathering the words. "When you've been on your own long enough, you forget what it means to be seen. Then this stubborn dog shows up." He nudged Tank with his knee, "and suddenly you're not invisible anymore. Someone's watching you, someone who sees through the scars." He looked away, eyes distant when I was in that bed, slipping in and out. It was like I could feel him looking for me, not just with his nose, with something deeper when they took him away. I swear to God it was like losing a limb. I didn't even know I still had. Maria nodded slowly, remembering how Frank's vitals had gone haywire. When they tried separating them, then miraculously stabilized when Tank was brought back in that same night, Frank said, voice growing husky. I could feel him again, coming closer, like headlights on a road at night, getting brighter and nearer. He wouldn't quit on me, so I didn't quit on myself either. Tank leaned into Frank's leg, sensing his emotion, his presence steady and grounding. Maria blinked back tears. Some things science can't measure, but I saw you two saved each other. Frank laid his hand on Tank's broad head. Still do every single day. They sat quietly, watching ducks glide under clouds, until Frank leaned forward, ready to go again. Oh, almost forgot. Maria said, fishing something from her bag. Officer Morales asked me to give you this. She handed over an envelope. Frank clumsily opened it with one good hand. Inside was a gift card to a local pet store with a note for Tank's new place. He earned it. Morales used to be terrified of dogs, Frank snorted. Imagine that now. He's sending gifts. Tank changes hearts. Maria said, grinning. They completed the park loop at a slow, steady pace, Frank testing his strength, Tank matching every motion. With perfect discipline when they reached the main path. A yellow school bus stopped, and a familiar young woman stepped off. There's our ride, Frank said, as Alina waved at them. Since their story had gone public, she'd started helping with rides to therapy and checkups. Her schedule, as a nursing student, flexible enough for it next week same time. Maria asked as they reached the curb. Frank shook her hand with his working arm. Thank you for today. You're the one who deserves thanks, Maria replied softly. You and Tank reminded me why I went into medicine in the first place. As Frank walked toward Alina and the waiting bus, Tank padded along at his side. Maria stood back, watching them with quiet reverence. They had come into her care as broken survivors and walked out as something more. Their story had turned into something bigger than treatment, a quiet lesson about loyalty, endurance, and what it means to truly see someone in the crisp sunlight of October. Frank Holloway walked forward slower than most, but with purpose. Tank glued to his side like always. Their road ahead wouldn't be smooth. Healing never is, but they were doing it together, bonded by hardship and reborn through love. Hey, Tank, Frank said as they neared the bus. Alina, waving them in. Sometimes the only family you get is the one that finds you. And I'm good with that. Tank looked up, as if to reply, eyes warm with shared understanding, just like the day he'd tracked that ambulance for 10 straight miles through baking asphalt and exhaust. Tank collapsed after that run, his paws raw, his chest heaving. The world saw a loyal dog, but Frank knew better. The truth was deeper. This wasn't just about a canine's instincts. It was about needing to be seen in your worst moment and finding someone who refuses to let go. Frank Holloway had given all he had to his country, his business, and his family, until there was nothing left. It's a road many older folks know too well, the silence that creeps in when you're no longer needed. But Tank never saw a man past his prime. He saw someone worth following, worth fighting for. Their story reminds us that recognition doesn't need words, and loyalty doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for presence. Frank had wondered if he still mattered in a world that moved too fast, and Tank had answered by running toward him through fire and noise and loneliness, saying, you are worth it, worth saving, worth chasing. For all of us who've ever asked if we still have value, this dog had a reply loud and clear, yes, you do, and I won't let you walk that road alone.